TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.
Hi, I'm Joe Sweeney. I founded the Acervo Project in response to the growing epidemic of human trafficking and child exploitation. Classifying this as an epidemic is an understatement. Our investigation teams and cyber analysts are tracking child predators every day. We're making a difference, but we need your help. The average age of a trafficked child is just 14 years old. Will you join the Acervo Project team? Donate $14 a month to protect the next at-risk 14-year-old. Pledge your $14 a month at theacervoproject.org. That's ASSERVO.org.
Hi, I'm Brad Dacus, president and founder of the Pacific Justice Institute. Welcome to Faith and Law. Now let's take a look at this latest trending viral video. In our face. In our face. Good night. Good night. Well, folks, that's where we're at. This isn't talking about something that's on some strange island far away. What we're talking about is what's happening in our communities, in our neighborhoods. These are real people. Now, these are real people who are lost. They're blind. We need to understand that's where they are. They need the light. They need the truth. They need the love. We need to respond to them and connect with them to give them the love of Christ, to demonstrate the love of Christ. At the same time, folks, the love of Christ is also what compels us not to be blind as to what's happening to our children. They're not just after the pastor at the church. They're not just after people in ministry. Folks, they're after your kids. And how are they after your kids? In the public schools, by trying to groom them with radical CRT, woke, and LGBTQ indoctrination. It's happening on a massive scale throughout the country. We see this in our cases at Pacific Justice Institute. They're also after our children on the internet. They're after them on TikTok and all kinds of other modes of communication. They're after us in terms of music and the arts. We need to be aware of that and understand the day and the time that we're in. And we need to respond to it just like God would want us to in love for our children and for those who are lost. Our faith is grounded in history on eyewitness testimonies, people who died for their faith, backed up by Roman records. And that they died because they saw Jesus risen from the dead. As an attorney, I could not picture a more proven faith than what we have with the gospel. It is finished. And all we need to do is in humility is to receive what he did on the cross. And he will separate that sin as far as the east is from the west. And so this is an example for us that even the Apostle Paul laid claim to his rights. Now, sometimes he relinquished his rights because it wasn't about the rights. Sometimes we can be rights obsessive, can't we? We need to be seeking the Lord and the guidance of the Holy Spirit before we step out and lay claim to our rights. We need to be seeking the counsel and the guidance of the Spirit. Let's take a look at one of our cases that we're handling right now. This is a case that is classic to what the work of the Pacific Justice Institute across the country. It's dealing with an employee who is very clear about their religious beliefs and convictions not to be vaxxed, like so many across the country. And they acknowledge that this employee had sincere religious beliefs and convictions, but then things turned on this employee. And to help talk about this, I'd like to interview one of our attorneys, Lynn Gore, out of our Arizona office. Lynn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Brad.
Now, Lynn, tell us about this case involving an employee who was wrongfully treated because of their sincerely held religious beliefs in the workplace?
Sure. This is a lady who was an infusion technologist. So what that meant was that she would travel to patients' homes to provide intravenous medications, antibiotics, um, anti-cancer medications directly to patients. So she didn't work in a clinic. She drove from house to house providing these services. When the vaccine mandate came down, she was very clear that violated her religious beliefs. She requested an exemption, and that was granted in October. And she was allowed to continue working through the rest of the year. But then in the month of December, the company unilaterally added this requirement that she also be tested weekly. So that's sort of the background of the case.
Okay, so the religious exemption was initially granted, right? So why did the employer decide to start punishing the employee by requiring them to be tested every week? I mean, the pandemic is over.
That's correct, Brad. And it's really unclear why they added this particular requirement, because it wasn't a requirement before the vaccine mandate was issued. So she was just doing usual precautions that were being practiced at the time, primarily masking, which I just want to mention, there was no transmission of COVID from her to any of her patients or back during the entire year and a half from the beginning of the pandemic to the time that the mandate came out. So whatever they were doing was working. And even after the mandate, after the exemption was granted, it was still working fine. And to be honest with you, Brad, I do not know exactly why they decided that they would go ahead and start testing her, could sort of change this accommodation midstream. And, she was willing to be tested if she had symptoms, obviously, but this was just randomly, not randomly, every week she had to be tested regardless of whether she had symptoms, regardless of whether she had contact with any other people that had COVID or anything else. So that was kind of a bridge too far for her. And she said she was not going to submit to that new additional requirement. But I will say, Brad, that the company's claim now is that not requiring weekly testing was an undue burden on them, in that it created a theoretical potential risk that she might have COVID when she goes to a patient's house. And so, as we know, that is not what the law says. There's got to be a real undue burden on the employer, something that they have to articulate that's going to really put them out, and not sort of a vague theoretical hardship. So they applied the law wrong, and it was very unfortunate that they did that.
Okay, now, Lynn, this isn't isolated, is it? This is actually happening across the country, right?
That's true, Brad. In fact, I would say that the majority of PJI cases around the country involve the vaccine mandates. Here in Arizona, I have 12 lawsuits. All of them involve the vaccine mandates. So yes, this is it's not uncommon. My hope is that these employers are seeing the writing on the wall and are going to step forward and do the right thing and make it right with these employees that they basically just terminated out of the blue without any real justification. As far as changing an accommodation, you do see that a few times. Most of my cases have been either just outright denials of accommodations, meaning that that the employer for some reason believed that perhaps the person's religious belief wasn't sincerely held or didn't apply to the vaccine. Or I have another employer who fired at least half a dozen people just saying it was going to be an undue burden without explaining what that was at all. So that there is a lot of this going around, and a few of them have involved changes or really bizarre accommodations. For example, I had another employee who requested an exemption. The exemption was granted, and the accommodation that was offered was unpaid leave. So in other words, that was an effective termination from his employment, which was totally bizarre. But yes, very common, and hopefully we're going to be working through these in the next year or two.
Okay, so what is the outlook of this case? How do you see this case progressing?
This case is a little different than most in that when this employee was hired, now this is a big corporation, and when this person was hired, she signed an arbitration agreement, meaning that she promised that if an employment issue arose, including a civil rights case, that case would go through arbitration instead of through court. So we filed the lawsuit not knowing that that was there. My client didn't recall signing it. Looks like she did. So we agreed to arbitration, which normally is not, we'd rather have this in front of a jury rather than an arbitration, which is a one attorney reviewing the entire case. But fortunately, this is not going to cost the client a significant amount of money. All the arbitration fees are going to be paid by the employer. And just today, I got a list of potential arbitrators that we'll be reviewing, discussing with the client to determine which one to select to go forward with the case. I feel very good about the case in that it was pretty obvious that they just wanted to get rid of her. Certainly they could have imposed that testing or they could have required that earlier in October when they granted her the exemption, and for whatever reason chose to wait a couple months to add that new condition. And I think any arbitrator is going to see that was discriminatory and unnecessary. And so I feel pretty good about the case. It's a very, very excellent client. I think she's going to present well as a witness, and I'm looking forward to this. This might even move faster than a court case, so I'm hoping that we'll even have this resolved by the end of the year.
Very good. Well, Lynn, keep up the great work. I know there's many people we're representing, just like your client, across the country. Godspeed, and thanks for your time. Now, folks, we've seen hostility in the workplace with regards to employees. That's a given. But we're also seeing it in terms of employers. We at Pacific Justice right now are defending a Christian-owned Korean spa in Washington State. This Korean spa is for women. So we're talking about moms and daughters at the age of 13 and up. It's a Korean spa, folks. So those of you who may not be familiar with Korean spas, you don't wear garments and clothes in Korean spas. That's why they keep the women separate from the men. However, one day, a biological male who claims to be transgender and have female identity decides that he wants to go in to the women's spa where mothers and their daughters are. And this Korean-owned spa, Christian-owned Korean spa, said, no way, not on our watch. And then he decided to leave, and rather than be tolerant towards people who see things differently, that is, they want to respect their bodies and not be visually violated, he decides to report this to the Washington Human Rights Commission. And help talk about this case matter, I'd like to bring on now the attorney handling this case, none other than Tracy Tribbett, who heads up one of our offices there in Washington State. Tracy, welcome to the show. Now, Tracy, tell us more about this case. What's going on, and what are the clients going through right now that you're representing?
Yes, Brad, our clients are actually going through quite a bit. Olympus Spa, which are the clients in question, they have a traditional Korean women's spa. And this case has received a great amount of notoriety. And in particular, on the west side of Washington, where it's very liberal, there have been great opposing viewpoints where our clients have received threatening phone calls. There have been protests, all because of the fact that they don't want to let men into their women-based spa. And we took this before a judge who actually dismissed our case, but gave us leave to amend, and we are going to be amending that complaint to refile.
Okay, so this is a private, not a government owned, this is a private establishment owned by a Christian Korean family. I mean, they have the legal right, don't they, to deny services to people, especially to men who want to enter a place where women are going to be naked and young teenage girls are going to be naked. They have a right to be able to deny that, right?
Yes, Brad, that is what we are maintaining, is that this particular business is not open to the public. It's not a place of public accommodation. It has always tailored its efforts towards women and has denied services to men. And it's also age-based. They don't allow young children under the age of 13 in. And we hold that that is their right and that is their entitlement as a place that is traditional, that is Christian owned, and that ought not to fall under these neutral laws of general applicability. And that's what the state is calling the Washington law against discrimination, telling our clients that they have to speak a certain message on their website, which is to lie, to say that men are women and women are men, and to allow men into their spa under the guise that they are women. Our clients will not be mocked. They will not mock God, and they do not want to propound any lies, whether or not society agrees with them or not. We are here to fight and defend for their right to speak the truth.
Okay, now let's talk about the clients here. They're a Christian family. They don't deny anyone. The only reason they denied him, as I understand it, was simply because he is not a she. It's a biological male, and as we also know, the overwhelming majority of those biological males claiming to be transgender are still sexually turned on by looking at naked women. So they were just simply protecting their clientele, right? They weren't being discriminatory for the sake of being discriminatory. They were just simply trying to protect their clients, right?
That's right, Brad. Our clients seek to give women a space where they feel safe, where they can receive these traditional shishin and jjimjilbang services without being viewed by the male eye, without having to worry about having or being in the presence of men while naked. And you're right, this complainant still is attracted to women. At the time, they were married to a woman as a man. And ironically, Brad, this complainant has now undergone gender change surgery and was within about 3 months of beginning the gender change process when they complained that they were denied services. And I think it warrants mentioning that this person never actually came to the spa. They allege that they called and talked to the owner after the fact when they were doing publicity touring with all of the newscasting agencies in Seattle. After the ruling came out, they lied. They did not tell the truth. They said that they had gone into the spa and then later claimed that they had only called. And all of this, the Human Rights Commission did not care about. They told our clients that the time to ensure that this person didn't feel discriminated against had passed. And so what we're dealing with here is a very selfish person who is unconcerned that women are in a vulnerable place and just want their rights and what they feel their portion as the 0.0% that they represent in the population ought to go before women, who are also another class of protected individuals. And, the state seems to have no problem with the fact that our clients do discriminate on the basis of gender. They don't allow men in. That is perfectly fine. And that is normative in many business models in the state. And if you think about what this would do to the business model, it changes it entirely. It forces our clients to speak a message they don't agree with. It forces them to change their business model. They will lose their business. They have employees who do not desire to work or perform these massages on a man. Many of their employees do not speak any other languages and would not have a job if they had to quit this job. And really, this one person has done so much harm to so many people, all in the name of selfishness. And so we are here to fight and defend freedoms for the majority, not the singular minorities.
Okay, Tracy, so where are we at in this case right now?
Yes, Brad. So the judge gave us leave to amend our complaint. We did that and refiled the complaint in the Western District of Washington in the federal court system. And the Attorney General's office filed or will file another motion to dismiss. And we knew that that would be their course of action. We will file our response and kind of go through this again. At that point, we will, if we lose, most likely appeal and follow that process as high, I guess, Brad, as you and or Kevin desire to take it. So we're here for the long haul, and we're here to fight for the rights of Christians and of this Korean family who would lose their business. And, this decision would expose women to harm. And we're here to fight for those rights and the rights of Christian business owners. So thank you, Brad.
Well, thank you so much for the hard work you're putting into this case. I know it's not just going to impact this family-owned business, but it's also going to be impacting Christian-owned, faith-based owned businesses all across the nation. Business owners who want to simply be able to have their business and not deny their faith, much less negatively victimize their clientele. So I keep up the great work. It's an important case, and God bless you.
Well, they're in the trenches and they're fighting, and PGI is on the front lines for the battle for freedom and liberty. They've been doing so much to equip pastors across the country and to really fight for the values that have made this country so great. Honored to be supportive of PGI.
We're living in a time when Christians are constantly under assault with their beliefs in the marketplace. And if there's not someone to advocate for them and help them with the legal necessities of defending themselves, they're going to get fired. They have no recourse. Most people don't have the resources to go hire a lawyer. It would deplete everything they own. And most lawyers, quite frankly, across the country don't deal in religious liberty issues.
Well, we're living in some very difficult days in America where basic freedoms and especially religious liberty is under attack. And that's one of the reasons why Pacific Justice Institute is so vitally important to the future of this nation. What a great group of lawyers, first-class, top-rate lawyers who are willing to stand up for freedom and stand up for our American citizens under attack.
Yeah, they can support, they can follow, they can pray. We need more organizations like PJI, and I could tell you that being in the front lines, there's not enough people that are actually in the trenches doing the difficult but tough work, and that's exactly why this organization is so critical.
One of the most incredible things about Pacific Justice Institute is that they do pro bono work. And what does that mean? Well, it means the rest of us have a responsibility. We've got to stand up and provide financial incentives and financial opportunities for these attorneys to get out there and do the fighting. And that's one of the reasons why we have Pacific Justice Institute attorneys on my national radio show, because we want to let people know, hey, there's a need here. These folks are doing very important work, and they're doing very important, successful work as well. And that's why they need our support.
When a Christian is targeted for his or her beliefs, it affects every believer in America. This idea that, well, it didn't happen to me. Well, you're next. And when Pacific Justice Institute takes on a case, it's not just that one individual that they really are representing. because a legal precedent may be established from that will protect 1 million believers who could be in the same position for the exact same issue.
Okay, so folks, we've just taken a look at the law and the challenges that we're facing today from a legal perspective. Let's take a look at it from a faith perspective, from a biblical perspective. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33, it says, "For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints." So if we see confusion, folks, we can be assured this is not of God. A society that is trying to encourage confusion among our young people to see themselves differently than as God created them to be. That's not of the Lord. That's confusion. Our God is not of confusion, folks. We need to understand that. This effort to try to groom and encourage confusion with regard to gender identity or sexuality, that's not of the Lord. That's evil. That is against God. And we as Christians need to have the same perspective. Folks, it may not agree with the culture of the day, but that's nothing new. Historically, Christianity has not always agreed with the culture of the day, but that's what makes Christianity stand out, is when we're willing to say, no, that is not right. This is the truth. And we do it, of course, in love. The other verse I want to look at is Isaiah 5, verse 20. "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, but put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." That's what we have happening today. People who are followers of the Lord, who exhibit the love of Christ and the truth of God, we're called evil. We're called dark. We're called backwards. We're called hate-filled. No, we're actually filled with love. We speak out because we care. We care about those who are lost. So that's what we're facing here today. Those who are givers of the light, those who are followers of Christ, are ostracized. Institutions of faith, like the church, is seen as evil, as dark. It's a complete reversal of reality. And yet we need to understand, we can't be shocked about this. We need to understand that this is a sign of the day and the hour where we are. And the closer we get to the return of Christ, we can expect this more and more and more. So how do we respond? Is it with shock? Is it with putting our head in the sand? No. It's living our faith more robustly than ever before. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of what? Of love and a sound mind and the willingness to be able to use the power that God has given us in our lives through the Holy Spirit and the truth of God to reach out to a world that is in desperate need of salvation and forgiveness. And with that, let us always remember, no matter what the challenges we're facing today, no matter how difficult the obstacle, always, always keep the faith.
Taken TV is making TV watchable again. Join us on the Active Kingdom Entertainment Network. Download Taken TV from your App Store now.